Just 100 kilometers from the northwest coast of Africa, the Canary Island archipelago rises up over volcanic foundations over 20 million years old. Forming part of Spain, the so-called Fortunate Islands have been a necessary port of call for settlers, merchants and explorers on their way to the New World since the 15th century. Partially thanks to their chronicles, we now know that the exuberant life that inhabits these landscapes today used to be vastly more abundant. Caressed by the trade winds and bathed by the cold Atlantic currents, the Canary Islands provide a habitat for over 500 unique plant species and a wide variety of native fauna. Thousands of invertebrates, reptiles, small mammals and beautiful birds live only in this land, and some have done so for thousands of years. One of these is the white-tailed laurel pigeon. This is an original species of the thermophile and pine forests, associated in part with the characteristic laurel forests of the north-facing slopes of the more mountainous of the Canary Islands. Without this complex prehistoric ecosystem, almost completely wiped out on mainland Europe, birds such as this would be driven to extinction. In fact, the white-tailed laurel pigeon disappeared from Gran Canaria not so very long ago.
Cuando una especie como la rabiche desaparece completamente y no hemos dejado ni un solo ejemplar prácticamente para que vuelva a repoblarse por sí misma y es necesario reintroducir, significa que debemos aprender rápidamente de estos ejemplos.
"500 years ago, an extensive mass of laurel forest and wax myrtle and tree heath covered 19,000 hectares in the heart of Gran Canaria. According to the chronicles, La Selva de Doramas, or Doramas Jungle, named after an Aboriginal leader during the Castilian conquest, used to astonish people with forests so thick sunlight could not penetrate. A shadow of what fascinated the conquerors back then still remains on other islands, such as in Los Tilos on La Palma or Garajonay National Park on La Gomera. Nearly 20 species of trees weave the fabric of the laurel forests here. Watered by a sea of clouds that forms above 600 meters, it is in forests like this that we can find what is known as horizontal rain, which provides the ideal humidity to host an ample melting pot of life. It is a complex ecosystem capable of remaining self-sufficient in both water and food. However, 99% of this gift of nature has disappeared from Gran Canaria at the hand of the world's most skilled predator, man. The flourishing sugar industry and the need to open up lands for new settlers led to the unfettered deforestation of much of the territory between the 16th and 17th centuries. Then, in the 18th and 19th centuries, population pressure and charcoal harvesting ended up devastating what had been La Selva de Doramas. Deforestation gradually became a death sentence for the wildlife that depended on the forest for refuge. A bird's-eye view shows the last vestiges of the Gran Canaria laurel forest that survive in what is now the Doramas Rural Park, protected since 1987, and also in the nature reserves of Los Tilos de Moya, Azuaje, El Brezal, and Barranco Oscuro. These relics are thousand-year-old witnesses to the wealth of Gran Canaria, and also the starting point for tackling one of the most ambitious environmental projects in the history of the Canary Islands. The RABICHE Life Project, funded by the European Union and the Cabildo, or Government of Gran Canaria, and in partnership with GESPLAN and the Heredad de Aguas, or Water Rights Association of Arucas and Firgas. Initial success in reforestation, led by the Cabildo de Gran Canaria, gave rise to a determination to give Columba janunii, or white-tailed laurel pigeon, a second chance too. This species has been extinct in Gran Canaria for almost 200 years.
En Gran Canaria queremos reconciliarnos con nuestra laurisilva y con las especies que la poblaban y que le daban vida a la laurisilva, y de alguna manera la reintroducción de esta paloma rabiche es esa punta de lanza en ese esfuerzo que queremos hacer en Gran Canaria por dotarla de su máximo esplendor y su belleza y empezar a entender también y concienciar a los gran canarios de la importancia que tiene el ser cuidadosos con el medio ambiente y los diferentes entornos y ecosistemas que nos ofrece este pequeño paraíso en miniatura que es Gran Canaria.
Columba ginuniae has very little in common with the domestic or wild pigeons that fly in the skies of the Canary Islands. Listed as an endangered and vulnerable species, the white-tailed laurel pigeon can grow to a length of 40 centimetres and have a wingspan of 67 centimetres. It has dark, wine-coloured breast, black wings, greenish flashes on the neck, and orange-coloured beak and eyes. The quickest way to identify it on the wing is by the characteristic white band across the tip of its grey tail. The white-tailed laurel pigeon, characteristic of thermophile forests and Canary Island pine forests, uses the laurel forest for feeding and shelter. It continues to survive in the wild on the neighbouring islands of Tenerife, La Gomera, La Palma and El Hierro. Despite this, reintroducing it to Gran Canaria poses a major scientific challenge, as a direct transfer of adult specimens to release them here does not appear to be feasible.
Animales que ya están afincados a una zona, ¿no? Entonces ellos pueden reconocer como otra zona como que no es su lugar, intentarían volver y lo más seguro es que ellas cruzaran de Gran Canaria, fueran a Tenerife y La Palma, entonces algunas morirían en el intento.
The white-tailed laurel pigeon shies from human contact, and an adult unaccustomed to humans can suffer serious injuries in its attempt to flee. It has taken 6 years of research to finally organise a plan with any guarantee of success. The plan has the backing of the University of La Laguna and has Aurelio Martín, a PhD in biology, as its scientific advisor. Fortunately, this project has managed to coordinate the efforts of many people. The LIFE programme, created for environmental conservation in the European Union, joined the project in November 2013. With the new funding, the commitment for the next 4 years is to reintroduce a stable colony of white-tailed laurel pigeons. To this end, and with a view to the future, it is essential to drastically increase the area of laurel forest. Over time, this habitat will provide the birds with food and shelter without the need for further human intervention.
Si hoy en este lugar ya estuviéramos aullando, haciendo una poseta adecuada y plantando los ejemplares que traemos del vivero, en 8 años tendríamos seguramente ya un bosque capaz de hacer sombra a una persona e incluso de dar refugio y algo de comida a palomas endémicas. El hecho histórico de recuperar este monte verde, junto con no solo con la parte florística, sino también con la parte faunística, es hacer historia natural de Gran Canaria, pero a la inversa de su destrucción.
The participation of other island institutions is vital to ensure the success of this scientific project. The future white-tailed laurel pigeons of Gran Canaria embark on their adventure even before they hatch out, here on the island of La Palma. The first pairs that will attempt to breed in captivity in Gran Canaria will come from the Wildlife Recovery Centre in Punta Llana. This will be far from simple due to the frequent and sometimes deadly confrontations between males and unreceptive females. Another point is that the new chicks cannot always be conceived by the same parents, as this would compromise the genetic variability that guarantees the health of the flock. In these circumstances, a search is set in motion.
Buscando las localizaciones, los nidos, los huevos, viendo en qué estado están, cómo están distribuidos, cómo se ven, a la hora de poder coger en el campo esos huevos o esos pollos que son necesarios para traerlos después al centro de rehabilitación y poder hacer las pruebas de cría en cautividad.
After several days of tracking, Rafael Pérez, a ranger of the Cabildo of La Palma, faces a dizzying challenge. The search sometimes takes place 60 meters above the ground.
Dadas las dificultades de los espacios en la isla, no es fácil acceder donde acceden ellas. Ellas acceden volando y nosotros tenemos que acceder por el suelo. Ya de hecho ves que me valgo de cuerdas, de esta dichosa vara que llaman lanza, y sin ello pues andar en estas zonas sería, aparte de dificultoso, arriesgado.
The white-tailed laurel pigeon nests on the ground, normally in precipitous terrain, gorges and in small hollows in the rock. Experience and the ranger's skill are essential to the success of the operation. On this occasion, one small egg will be sufficient reward for so much effort. Treated with care and not allowing the temperature to fall too much thanks to the preheated grain, the egg will be taken and assessed for a possible journey to Gran Canaria. One day, its offspring will be able to fly around there in forests, not very different from those of La Palma. While the white-tailed laurel pigeon eggs and chicks start out on their own particular odyssey, the seed of the new future is also growing in Gran Canaria with reforestation work. The richest of the laurel forest nurseries is to be found in La Finca de Osorio, in the former domains of the lush Selva de Doramas. Purchased by the Island Council in 1981, thousands of seeds grow in its facilities. These seeds have been collected between August and November. Species including laurel, mahogany, ebony, holly, greenheart, southern olive and strawberry tree wait here to carpet the slopes and forests of Gran Canaria. Working in collaboration with the publicly owned company Gesplan, the Cabildo carries out reforesting activities between October and January. Traditionally, these are the dampest and coolest months, ideal for the young plants to take root. After locating and fencing off the best areas, in this case protected, they will have to be cleared of competing species such as bramble, sugarcane or eucalyptus if necessary. Some pine forests planted decades ago in former laurel forest areas will also be replaced over time.
El siguiente paso es la plantación, que se hace cuando ya haya llovido, a partir de octubre. Hay que ponerle un protector individual a cada planta para evitar que sobre todo los conejos y también las ratas la afecten. Y después ya lo que son los mantenimientos, los ríos de mantenimiento que se hacen a partir de marzo y sobre todo en el verano.
Forest rangers and sometimes up to 1,000 volunteers, such as on the Day of the Tree in November, play an active part in reforestation work. Other potential allies for the natural recovery of the laurel forest are species that, although exotic, act curiously enough as foster parents. This is the case of the elm. The laurel species that will end up replacing it naturally are already growing in the protection of its shade. In 20 or 25 years' time, thanks to the European Union LIFE project, nearly 1,000 hectares like this one will be carpeted by the lush green of almost 500,000 new trees.
Este trabajo entiendo que es importantísimo, sobre todo sinergiar lo que es la restauración forestal, ambiental, con la recuperación de una especie tan interesante como es la paloma, que lo que va a tener es un efecto multiplicador de distribución de semillas.
The laurel forest saplings grow while new tenants have just landed on the island of Gran Canaria. Several chicks arrive at the endemic pigeon breeding centre in Osorio, in the borough of Terror, after a short journey of a few hours between the transfer and the flight from La Palma. Here, the pigeons get ready to play their part in the project, to survive. First of all, they will have to pass through the expert hands of the head vet, Alejandro Suárez.
Todas las palomas están anilladas con una anilla de color que es única de ese individuo, con lo cual desde que el que está siguiendo ese animal ve esa anilla, pues ya sabe que ese es el individuo. Y en otras ocasiones se les pone un radiotransmisor en la cola, que es una antena que emite una señal de radio que se puede seguir por un receptor.
The arrival of the eggs in the centre, like the egg collected by the ranger on the island of La Palma, also requires a stringent health check to be conducted. Sometimes they will have to spend some time in this incubator that strictly controls their temperature and changes their position regularly, as their mothers would do in the wild. To ensure the good health of the embryo, Alejandro also carefully measures and inspects the interior of the egg to check for anomalies. But despite all the care, a more suitable mother will have to be found for the young orphan sooner or later. Putting it with other white-tailed laurel pigeons is not always an option. Given their nervous nature, they could damage the egg or break it and spoil weeks of hard work. The scientific solution to the problem is quite ingenious. Calmer parents will be sought for the eggs, parents that can accept a strange egg in return for those in their nest. Fortunately, there are selfless mothers who are not too worried about appearances. This is the case of the domestic dove, another member of the pigeon family that is relatively common in the Canary Islands and which can become the best possible foster mother if the proper steps are taken. To achieve this, the calculations will have to be done to ensure that the intruder chick hatches out on the same day as the chosen dove's own chick would have done. Dove chicks hatch 14 days after being laid, and the white-tailed laurel pigeon hatches after 18 days, so the age of each egg has to be recorded accurately, along with the breeding habits of the foster parent doves. Hence, if a white-tailed laurel pigeon lays on a Monday, we need to find a dove that lays an egg on Friday of the same week.
Si esos huevos no están sincronizados con los padres, pues los padres no tendrán la alimentación que necesitan para criar los huevos o abandonarán el huevo, lo podrán romper y es muy complicado. Hay que sincronizar, lo más importante es sincronizar el momento adecuado con las parejas que tengamos aquí en el centro.
This laurel pigeon chick has hatched on Gran Canaria. In a few short weeks, it will have grown bigger than the dove and will need more room to continue growing. At the same time, the same thing is happening to the forest that will offer it shelter in the future. The laurel forest needs more and more room to grow and put down roots. The great reforestation program embarked upon in the last year is possible thanks to the donation of public lands for this purpose, but also thanks to the cooperation of private entities, such as the Water Rights Association of Arucas and Firgas. This historic institution was founded in the mid-16th century and was responsible at the time for irrigating a large proportion of the island. Its heirs own a large extension of land that is vital for laurel forest recovery projects.
Son fincas que ya no tienen uso agrícola, como lo tuvieron hace 50, 60 años atrás, y que actualmente están ubicados en la zona ideal para este proyecto. Es un proyecto muy ilusionante que lo veremos en un futuro a corto plazo. Veremos los cambios que se va a producir de toda esa reforestación.
The association has given over 400 hectares to date, along with facilities and qualified staff. With time, the value of all this land will be enhanced as the laurel forest condenses and captures water, which is vital for the island crops. In fact, understanding and close cooperation between scientists, public institutions and private entities has been a fundamental factor for winning the financial backing of the European Union. The chick that arrived as an egg from La Palma takes a decisive step in the Osorio breeding centre too. After being looked after for a month by the doves, the young laurel pigeon is transferred to a large cage. It is time to learn to fly. In the spacious 18-metre-long flight cage, the chick can exercise its wings and flight muscles for approximately 2 months.
Lo más importante de este jabalón es que puedan volar y sobre todo también que tengan bastante espacio para ponerles frutos de laurisilva y que ellas empiecen a comérselos y empiecen a ver el sabor de los diferentes frutos y para ello, para que después, cuando sean liberadas, puedan alimentarse de esos frutos.
Here the pigeons will also create family groups to hone their instincts even further, as they would in the wild. Very shortly, these white-tailed laurel pigeons will have to share their world not only with wild predators, but also with other inhabitants that fortunately are already starting to get to know them. Much of the success of the European Life Programme rests on educating and raising awareness amongst the general public. Using seminars, talks and both traditional and digital education programmes, thousands of children and adults have been able to get to know the white-tailed laurel pigeon close up. The Cabildo has also paid special attention to the farmers and hunters of the area being repopulated. They have been taught to distinguish this pigeon from other birds that they hunt. The importance of recovering the laurel forest is a message that has also been transmitted to the general population. With respect to the future, the enormous benefits of the European Life RABICHE programme for Gran Canaria are difficult to quantify. The natural enhancement of the water table reserves and the conservation of countless endemic species are enough to make any investment profitable.
Se revaloriza su naturaleza, se pone en valor efectivamente lo que es nuestros bosques, nuestras especies, nuestra flora y nuestra fauna en este caso. Nosotros queremos extender todas estas ideas a lo largo de toda Gran Canaria, en los colegios, la gente joven, los niños, que aprendan a amar la naturaleza y aprendan a amar a la isla con ella.
It is now 3 months since the egg hatched and the restless laurel pigeon raised by doves has made its last journey in captivity. The last cage is located in Barranco de la Virgen, between the boroughs of Firgas and Valle Seco. Here the birds will feel, hear and discover the forest for the first time. A fascinating home, but full of hazards.
Ahí había que diferenciar entre especies autóctonas con las que ellas se enfrentan desde siempre, que puede ser el gavilán o un halcón, o las aves rapaces, mayormente esas dos especies. Pero después hay especies introducidas como el gato o la rata que depredan a los juveniles y a los pollos cuando están en el nido.
3 out of every 4 laurel pigeon nests are raided by rats and feral cats that have settled in the forest. The survival of the new laurel pigeon colony will depend on their numbers, but once again, it will also depend on raising awareness amongst the island population in the long term. Finally, the climax of the Life RABICHE programme has arrived. Opening the cage and the pigeon's instinctive flight to freedom. The cages will remain open for several days in case the more cautious scouts need to return for supplies. With luck, this will be the last human hand that interferes in their life. The birds will fly and nest in freedom in areas of the Natura 2000 network, protected by European legislation. Sooner or later, the natural cycle of life will take the initiative. The laurel forests that have been given a second chance will find their own resources. The birds will find more shelter, and while feeding, they will in turn scatter the seed of more trees. The leaves of the trees in turn will take up more and more water, which will replenish the water table and help to maintain the climate and temperature of the whole island. Thus, fascinating spots like the relics of Los Tilos de Moya will be able to reappear over time in the heart of Gran Canaria, and even open the gates to another challenge: to recover Bowles laurel pigeon too, another endemic bird driven to extinction along with la selva de doramas. The future looks exciting and promising.
La idea es hablar de Canarias, pues hemos tenido la suerte de que en La Palma conservamos muchas cosas pues más como su origen, pues si en otras no han podido conservarlas como nosotros o el hombre ha metido la mano, pues yo creo que es muy importante que podamos colaborar para conservarlo.
Me resulta grato pues poder colaborar o poder poner mi pequeño grano de arena para que dentro de 30, 40 años pues los niños que hoy tienen 5 años vean un bosque duplicado en su volumen y en su, ¿no?, el número de hectáreas.
No podemos permitirnos el lujo, igual que pasa en la selva amazónica, tampoco en Canarias, que es un núcleo de biodiversidad, perder una fórmula, un diseño de la naturaleza que es único e irrepetible, porque no lo volveremos a encontrar nunca más.
Al final, esto es apostar por el futuro, o sea, trabajar en el medio ambiente, ocuparnos de la conservación e intentar recuperar aquello que la mano del hombre estropeó, y que sea ahora precisamente el hombre el que se empeñe y persista en su recuperación, es pensar en las nuevas generaciones.
Today, over a century after it became extinct on the island, Columba janunii once again takes to the skies in Gran Canaria. Some 120 white-tailed laurel pigeons have already been reintroduced, and more than a dozen have been born in the wild. By 2017, when the LIFE programme draws to a close, if all goes to plan, over 200 specimens will have been reintroduced. Almost 500,000 trees will be planted during this time that will change the face of the island. The RABICHE Life Project symbolises a set of universal values. In recent decades, man has for the first time been in a position not only to destroy, but also to recover and protect what planet Earth gifted him in the past. It is an ethical duty and an enormous responsibility to use this gift now to pay man's outstanding debt with his surroundings. A debt of life.